Hey guys, I just want to talk to you about something. I am totally compelled to get on camera and tell you that you're hurting the wrong people. And let me explain why I feel this way. I've been seeing a lot of mistargeting and collateral damage happening with this whole OGL situation. And look, let me just say right off the bat, I totally think Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, to a greater extent, they messed up. The original leaked OGL was a huge blow to third-party publishers, and they just tried to inch in and close in on the IP more than people are comfortable with. Also, I'm not sponsored by Huel. It's just a comfy shirt, bro. Not a sponsor. Anyways, moving on. The way I see WotC and the way I see Hasbro is I see as a D&D player, I see Hasbro like a dragon, and you don't trust a dragon. You make deals with it, you barter with it, and you have a respectful understanding of each other. But you never think the dragon's your friend, because at the end of the day, the dragon's going to pick the horde, its gold horde, over you. All right. So it's been the way that way from the beginning. And a lot of old heads, people who've been in Dungeons and Dragons for a long time will tell you that. I mean, before it was owned by WotC, it was owned by TSR, and those guys were suing left and right any third-party publisher who made anything for Dungeons and Dragons. And the point is, the original OGL, the one that everyone really likes from 3.5, was not drafted out of kindness. It was drafted out of necessity, because long story short, they're wasting a bunch of legal funds and getting a lot of bad press by suing all these third-party publishers. So the origin story of the OGL itself was never to be nice. So yeah, you fast forward 15, 20 years, they're going to try to inch in a little bit closer, because Dungeons and Dragons is popping off from Stranger Things, from lockdown, from online D&D becoming way more viable. Name your reason, right? There's so many of them. And the movie's coming out, which you're betting big on. One D&D is totally a way to make it an easier to understand system, which I have my own gripes about, but that's like a whole nother video. But exactly what I'm trying to say is, I think it's healthy to be mad at Wizards of the Coast, WotC, Hasbro, but I'm seeing people widen their target and hurt the actual fans and hurt D&D as a whole. And let me explain why you shouldn't hurt D&D and attack D&D, but also attack Hasbro, and how you can do that. Let me just say the quiet part out loud. You can't own D&D. WotC owns a license for now, and they might have it for forever. But at the end of the day, imagine this situation, right? Imagine you guys do such a good job of your boycott and the strike, or whatever you want to call it, that Hasbro just decides to close their D&D section. Their division is just shut down, right? People are going to be happy as hell, dude. People are going to celebrate. They're going to rejoice, because there's going to be no IP enforcement. Third-party publishers are going to flourish, and more people will play the game than ever. That's my point. It's that it's like owning rock paper scissors. It's like owning tic-tac-toe. You just own a license for it. So as more people come to our game and it grows and it expands, this bad press, this over-reporting from all these different YouTubers and news sources and Twitter is making us look bad. Not WotC, not Hasbro, because if you are a brand new person who's just poking your head in, just to see what's going on in the D&D space, and you see all this back and forth, you're going to walk out of the pool before you ever dip your toes in it. I've also seen, I've had firsthand experiences, but first of all, I've seen stories on Reddit and a lot of anecdotal stories where people are being shamed for playing D&D and for promoting D&D games and for looking for D&D groups and selling D&D products. And I think the reasonable percentage of us can say that's out of hand. And I've also personally been in DM workshops. Well, they'll say, they've said, hey, if your listing or your game is about Dungeons and Dragons, I'm not going to look at your listing. I'm not going to look at your game, because I'm not going to give Hasbro any money. We're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, which is a game you can play in your head. Prisoners play it in prison with pen and paper. This game transcends any sort of IP enforcement, and I think it's just very short-sighted to target the fans and the community instead of Hasbro and WotC. I'm seeing YouTubers such as XP to Level 3 and Wintry DnD and Crick Crab talk about how they are not comfortable making D&D content because they don't want to give the wrong impressions to their fans. We're losing like real YouTubers, real content creators, real important people in our community who have given us so much, and they're afraid to participate in the community because they don't want to give the wrong message, and they think that if they support D&D, they support Hasbro, which is totally wrong. So be careful to not mix the two together. D&D is not Hasbro. D&D is not WotC. They just own the license for now. And you playing with your friends and putting and involving new people in it, sure, at the end of the day, it might give Hasbro a few more dollars, but it's going to do us a greater service because overall, they don't own D&D, the community does. And we really have to ask ourselves, because the way I see it, you guys have done a good job of letting WotC, Hasbro know that you don't like the OGL, and they're changing it. And of course, their statements have been wishy-washy and non-committal and a lot of legalese. But I have good faith at the end of the day, we're going to come out on the other end of this as winners. And the new OGL, if it stays at all, if they don't just roll back to the 1.0, the new OGL will be beneficial or in our favor more than theirs, because they tried to move the goalpost and we caught them and said, hey, don't do that. And they're like, okay, my bad. Because you don't trust the dragon, right? But what is the damage to the D&D brand on the journey to get to that win condition, right? Like, ask yourself, if you are a person looking in, would you care about this community? Well, I'm seeing a lot of influencers and social media in general and news sources just over-reporting on this to the point that it's well past awareness and letting people know what the problem is. I'm seeing daily uploads, twice a day uploads, people just making up fake leaks and just reporting them before they even verify them, and just making us look bad, unprofessional, and kind of toxic. Because I'm sure the majority of us don't only play D&D, right? You are in gaming spaces, you're definitely on YouTube spaces, and compare this drama to other drama you've seen that isn't within the D&D community, right? It's a bad look. So I think I get that the OGL view juice is flowing because I'm doing it right now. I'm participating in it. But ideally, I would like to never talk about this again and wrap this thing up, put this behind us, because our game is suffering. So what I'm trying to say is, they care and we're winning. But just look at the bigger scope, that even though we are hurting Hasbro, we cannot take down our community with it. So that's it. That's just what I wanted to say. That's my 2 cents. At the end of the day, if you're not doing this for people who actually enjoy playing D&D, fans of D&D, people who have been this for years, decades, who've made friends and relationships and learned about themselves and others through this, if you're not doing this boycott, this community backlash for the fans, then who are you doing it for? Because you're attacking them at some point. So anyone who's shaming people for playing D&D, don't do that. Because if you're not doing it for the fans, who are you doing it for? Anyways, that's my take on this. Hopefully we see this wrapped up in a few weeks. If you like the video, hit subscribe, leave a comment. I really want to know what you guys think. And that's it. Have a good one.